found this antique dresser on Facebook Marketplace. It didn't come with the top 2 drawers, and I have debated about what to do for about a year now, until just recently. If I removed the top 2 drawers, you would see the top wasn't one solid piece. If I kept the drawer cubbies, I would have to do something with them. But what would I do? Well, check out what I ended up doing. Just like with every furniture makeover, I got started by removing the hardware. Look at the gunk behind these things. I personally don't like these poles, so they are not going back on. Then I removed the drawer boxes on the top. They were attached with a couple of screws on the front and the back. And then that left us with a top that had 2 large holes in it. So we pried that off, and it didn't want to come at first. We eventually got it off though, and it was just held on with some old glue and nails. Then we sprayed everything with my favorite furniture cleaner, Crud Cutter, and wiped it all down to remove any dirt, grease, or grime. And all of that gunk from behind the hardware did not budge at all. So when the Crud Cutter was dry, we used 100 grit sandpaper to sand it off. I went through so many sheets of sandpaper on these. I have no idea what it was, but man, it did not want to come off. Eventually, it all came off, and I sanded it all with 150 grit sandpaper and then 220 grit sandpaper to smooth it all out. My husband took over for a bit to scuff sand the dresser for me and then filled in the scratches and dings with wood filler. We let the wood filler dry overnight, and then he sanded the wood filler down and finished scuff sanding everything the next morning. And then he cleaned up all of the dust with the vacuum. At this point, I realized that the keyhole on one drawer was damaged, so I fixed that with some quick wood. And then I realized that we needed to fill in the hardware holes because I was not putting that old hardware back on. And the old holes weren't evenly spaced either. So Taylor filled in those hardware holes with some more quick wood. While the quick wood dried, we cut a new top for the dresser. We measured twice and used the table saw to cut it to the right size. But when we put it on the dresser, it was an inch too big. So we cut it again. Thank goodness we cut it too big and not too small. So this was an easy fix. Then we taped all the edges so we could router the edges and get a clean cut. And we tested out some different router bits. Good thing we tested them because we didn't go with the first option. Then Taylor routed the edge of the new top, and I did the most important job, removing the tape. We attached the new top to the dresser with some glue and brad nails. Nothing too complicated here. And then I filled the nail holes and knots with some plastic wood filler. After the wood filler and quick wood were dry, we sanded them down smooth and cleaned up all of the dust. We lined our paint tray with some tinfoil and filled it up with some Aqua Lock primer in black. The more I use this stuff, the more I love it. I brushed and rolled it onto the dresser, hoping to fill in the open wood grain that I created by sanding the drawers down to raw wood in some spots, and to fill in any open wood grain texture on the top of the dresser. If I would have sprayed it on, I wouldn't have filled in any of the wood grain, so even though I don't care for rolling paint on, this was an exception to my rule. It went on really well with the roller though, and I love that this primer is black. It's water-based and it has excellent adhesion properties. When the primer was dry, I could still see some wood grain texture in the drawers where I had sanded to bare wood, so I filled those spots in with some wood filler and let it dry overnight. The next day, I sanded everything down smooth with 220 grit sandpaper, though I probably didn't need to sand everything. The primer went on really smooth, but since I was already sanding the wood filler, I just hit all of it. And then I primed the drawers and the top of the dresser again for good measure. And when the primer was dry, an hour later, I sanded it down smooth again and cleaned up the dust. Since I wanted to spray paint onto the dresser, I taped off the drawers with painter's tape and plastic so paint wouldn't get inside the drawers. We also laid down plastic on the walls and on the floor. And then I mixed the paint into the sprayer. I used Lily Moon Paint's new all-in-one paint called Opulent in the color Wilderness. They were a sponsor at a conference I went to this summer, so I got it for free to try it out. And this color is gorgeous. I added about 15% water to the paint because you know me, I don't like spraying paint without thinning it out first. I tested the spray out on the cardboard box and then sprayed it onto the dresser. It felt thicker than I like once I got really spraying. So it sprayed slower and I was worried that there was going to be a lot of texture still. But an hour later when it was dry, I checked it out and it looked so good. No texture was left behind and the paint had really good coverage too. It did feel slightly rough to the touch, kind of chalky, which happens to me with my favorite top coat a lot too when it dries too fast or overspray gets on it. So, not shown here, I added a splash more water to thin it out just a little bit more, and then I sprayed a second coat of paint. I liked how it sprayed so much better this time. I let it dry for 4 hours and then drilled new holes into the drawers with my Kreg hardware jig. And I put new brass knobs on. If you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe button so you can see more of our videos. Here's what it looked like before, and here's what it looks like now. First, I absolutely love this color. Isn't it such a good shade of green? I love the new look overall. The details on the side of the dresser stand out more now, and I think it looks so much better without the drawers on the top. But the real question is, what do you think of the new look? Let me know in the comments. As far as Lily Moon Opulent paint, overall, I think it's a great paint. I wouldn't say that it's my favorite ever though. It's very durable. I brushed some on a scrap board with and without sanding beforehand and with no primer. Only a few days later, it's not budging when I scratch at it. I didn't get any bleed through stains at all, which I thought I might get some bleeding, but there's absolutely none. The selection of colors is fabulous. The coverage was great, but since it's an all-in-one paint, I didn't think that it would be so matte, where it scratches, scuffs, and gets really dirty really easily just from touching it. But it is definitely a matte paint. That is the biggest bummer for me about this paint. If you love a matte paint finish though, this paint will be excellent for you. I ended up putting some Wise Owl furniture salve all over the dresser to help reduce how easy it is to scuff and get dirty. And then I added some more salve on the inside of the drawers to freshen up the wood, and on the wood drawer tracks to help the drawers go in and out easier. And now I'm thinking I might just keep this dresser instead of selling it. We'll see. Are you confused and not sure where to start with your furniture makeover? Don't worry, I got your back. Click the link in my comment to download our free painting checklist so you can paint your furniture as if you hired a professional to do it.